And this lecture series is going to talk about the new monarchs around the time period of 1460 to 1520. The new monarchs are going to consolidate power and create the foundation for Europe's first modern nation states in France, England, and Spain. This evolution had begun in the Middle Ages, but meanwhile monarchies had grown weaker in Eastern Europe during the Middle Ages. However, these new monarchies will never achieve absolute power. Absolutism will not emerge effectively until the 17th century. An example will be when we speak about Louis XIV in France. So these new monarchies also were not nation states in the modern sense, since populations did not necessarily feel that they belonged to a quote-unquote nation. Identity tended to be much more local or regional at this time, and the modern notion of nationalism did not emerge until the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The characteristics of these new monarchies are going to be reduced the power of the nobility through taxation and confiscation of lands from uncooperative nobles, and the hiring of mercenary armies or the creation of standing armies. The advent of gunpowder at this time that resulted in the production of muskets and cannon will increase the vulnerability of noble armies and their knights. However, many nobles, in return for their support of the king, gained titles and offices and served in the royal court or as royal officials. We're also going to see the reduction of the political power of the clergy. The medieval notion of the church being supreme to the state will be replaced in belief and practice. We're going to see the creation of more efficient bureaucracies, which will enable the new monarchs to begin centralizing control of their realms. Also, the increased political influence of the bourgeoisie at the expense of the nobility. In return, the bourgeoisie brought in much-needed revenues to the crown. This is going to be more so in France than in Spain. We'll see that as it moves along. And increased public or national debt by these new monarchs taking out loans from merchant bankers. Opposition to the new monarchs or to monarchical power are nobles resenting the decline of their political influence in favor of the bourgeoisie. Clergy members are going to see the Pope as their leader, not the monarchs. We're going to have some discrepancies there between who's in charge. Also, independent towns are going to resist more centralized monarchical control. So in France, which is the first nation we're going to be speaking about, political and economic recovery have begun after the 100 Years' War. England, if you remember, was expelled from France after the 100 Years' War, and the defeat of the Duchy of Burgundy in 1477 will remove the threat of a new state in the eastern part of France. Remember, Burgundy had allied with England in the 100 Years' War. We're going to see the rise of the Valois line of monarchs, or Louis XI, the Spider King, 1461 to 83. He will be responsible for creating a large royal army. He dealt ruthlessly with nobles, individually and within the Estates General. He will increase taxes and exert significant power over the clergy. He actively encouraged economic growth within France and promoted new industries such as silk and weaving. He's going to encourage foreign merchants and craftsmen to immigrate to France. And he's also going to begin to enter into commercial treaties with England, Portugal, and the Hanseatic League. The next monarch that we need to talk about for France is Francis I. The Concordat of Bologna in 1566, the King of France now had power to appoint bishops to the Gallican or French Church. This is going to represent a major blow to papal influence in France. So again, here we see the monarchy being over the papacy. Yet French control over these appointments was one reason why France did not become Protestant during the Reformation. So we're going to see France hanging on to its church because it controlled some of its actions. Taille, which is a French-instituted direct tax on all land and property, will also be instituted under Francis I, and this is going to enable the French government to expand its budget on such things as a larger army. Next, we're going to move to England, and again, after the 100 Years' War, England, however, is going to step itself into another war called the War of Roses between 1455 and 1477. Two noble families, the House of York and the House of Lancaster, will fight a civil war to gain the crown. The Yorkists will end up being victorious and give rise to the Tudor dynasty, which will rule England until 1603. Henry VII, we need to talk to of the Tudor dynasty, will reduce the influence of the nobility, just as we saw in France, in part through the Star Chamber or secret trials. Nobles were tried without a jury, could not confront witnesses, and were often tortured. Nobles were no longer allowed to have private armies with their own insignias. However, the English Parliament continued to gain power in its struggle with the crown, so we see that increasing power of some what we're going to see as constitutional governments later. Standard government procedures of law and taxation will be developed under Henry VII. Thus, the Tudors did not have the power over taxation that the Valois enjoyed in France. So we're not going to have those direct taxes as we saw in France. Moving to Spain, a couple we've talked a little bit about, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile will unify Spain under their marriage. In 1492, we'll have the Reconquista in Spain, the goal being to remove the last of the Moors, or the Muslim Moors, and the Jews, and Christianize Spain. The last Muslim stronghold of Granada surrendered under the Reconquista. We'll have a loss of Jews and Moors, resulting in a significant decline in the Spanish middle class during this time period, between 30,000 to 60,000 Jews expelled. The Hermandis are alliances of cities to oppose nobles. This is going to aid the monarchs by bringing cities in line with royal authority. During this time period, we're also going to have the Spanish Inquisition. This was conceived by Isabella, and this is an act in which the monarchy enforced the authority of the national or Catholic Church. Tomás de Torquemada, a Dominican monk, will oversee the Inquisition. And the Inquisition purpose was to target conversos, or Jews who had converted to Christianity but were now suspected of backsliding into Judaism. Thus began a wave of anti-Semitism in certain parts of Europe, a theme that we will kind of follow through Europe. In Portugal, 4,000 Jews who refused to leave were massacred in 1506, and Germany will also begin systematically persecuting Jews in 1509. Cardinal Ximenes, by 1500, had succeeded in getting rid of the abuses and opposition to reform in the church, something that did not happen in most other countries. Thus, Spain, like France, did not turn Protestant during the Reformation. So the Spanish Inquisition and all that was negative, it will allow Spain to remain Catholic and not turn Protestant during the Reformation, like France. And we'll see how that varied in other nations as we move into the Reformation in our next unit. Next, we have the Habsburg Empire, or more commonly known as the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire consisted of about 300 semi-autonomous German states. Each state had its own foreign policy, and wars sometimes occurred between the states. The center of Habsburg power was in Austria and other hereditary states nearby. The HRE was not a new monarchy, although we need to include it in this lecture. The emperor did not have centralized control, could not levy taxes or raise armies outside of his own hereditary lands, largely around Austria. Habsburg kings were never able to gain control of the numerous German states, duchies, and principalities in the Holy Roman Empire that had enjoyed their own independence. Maximilian I, from 1493 to 1519, will gain territory in eastern France via his marriage to Mary of Burgundy. It will spark a fierce dynastic struggle between the French Valois dynasty and the Habsburgs that would last until 1559. Charles V, from 1519 to 1556, was the most powerful ruler in Europe in the 16th century. As Holy Roman Emperor, he controlled the Austrian Habsburg lands while he ruled the Spanish Empire at the height of its power. His army sacked Rome in 1527, that symbolically ended the Renaissance in Italy, as we spoke about in the Italian Renaissance. So he is the Spanish ruler that will invade Italy and overrule the French in taking Rome. Habsburg-Valois wars from 1519 to 1559. The Holy Roman Empire was locked in a dynastic struggle with Francis I of France for control of Burgundy and the territories in Italy. Charles V sought to prevent the spread of Protestant Reformation in Germany throughout his reign. So he will be an active fighter against the Protestant Reformation, and also a very powerful ruler, the most powerful ruler in Europe in the 16th century, and symbolically ends the Renaissance in Italy with his sacking of Rome in 1527.